Now we'll walk through how to create and use bank rules in VRTrust. With bank rules, we can automatically create and match transactions in VRTrust based on defined conditions as they come in from the bank connection. This works whether we are using Plaid or uploading bank records by CSV. From the bank reconciliation screen, we go to Bank Rules and click Add Rule to begin creating a new rule. The first thing we do is give the rule a name. We can choose to automatically create and match transactions to new incoming bank records. If we toggle this on, the system will automatically create a transaction and match it to the bank record when it finds a record that meets the conditions we define below. If we leave this turned off, the system will just make a suggestion within the bank reconciliation screen, and we will need to accept it manually. Next, we define Apply To. Here, we decide whether the bank record is an expense, money out, or a deposit, money in. The options below will change a little depending on what we select. We can also choose which accounts to apply the rule to. This can be set to all accounts or limited to specific ones. Now we define the conditions for the rule. Conditions can be based on fields like description or amount. For example, we can tell VRTrust to look for a description that contains, equals, or starts with a specific word or phrase. Then we can add conditions to layer them. For example, we want this rule to apply when the description contains housekeeping and the amount is less than $300. You can layer as many conditions as you'd like. Next, we can select a vendor or a contact for the transaction. If needed, we can toggle on prior month posting to have transactions post to the last day of the previous month. For instance, if a bank record comes in on the 3rd of the month and you want that to post in the previous month, you can toggle this on. So, if a bank record comes in on April 3rd and you toggle that on, the system will post that transaction on March 31st. This is a way to let users accrue expenses in a specific month, even if the cash payment for the expense went out in the next month. Next, we can edit the description. By default, the description here uses the bank description. If you want to override that, you can toggle this off and enter a custom description. In the allocation section, we define the accounting to apply on the created record. So, when these conditions are met, we create an expense using these allocation rules. We can do a single allocation, or we can do percentage-based or fixed amounts and add multiple lines. If you choose percentage, the system will validate that it adds up to 100. Here, you can add markups and taxes, just like in a normal manual expense. Define bill to, the account, the listing, and the description on each line. If we want to overwrite it, we can write something here. Otherwise, it will just default to the above. Let's go through one together so it makes a bit more sense. So let's say we are reconciling our trust account and working through this reconciliation. We see a cleaning fee for $150. If we want the accounting for that to be the same every time we see an expense like this, we can define conditions in a bank rule. This rule will automatically apply the accounting when future bank records meet those conditions. Click Add Rule. We will call it Housekeeping. For now, we will leave this toggled off so we can see what it suggests rather than automatically creating the transaction. We can change this later. Then we add our conditions. It's an expense because there was money going out. Let's say our description must contain housekeeping or housekeeper. If the vendor is not in the system yet, we can add one on the fly. Let's turn on the date toggle. If the description toggle is on, we can leave the description to default to the bank record description. Now, let's assume all housekeeping payments are the responsibility of the manager. We are not going to bill those to owners. We want to use the account Housekeeping Billed to Manager. We'll assume that 20% of the expense is for supplies and the rest is for labor. So we can allocate 80% to housekeeping and 20% to supplies. The system will validate that the total equals 100% before allowing us to move forward. Click Save. Next, we will see a preview of existing bank records already in the system. We can choose to apply the rule to those transactions right away, or we can leave that alone. For now, we'll leave it as is, so we can see from the bank reconciliation screen what happens. If we go back to that bank account now and find that bank record, we can see that we have a suggested rule for housekeeping. If we remember, the conditions we set were that the description contains housekeeping or housekeeper. This bank record meets those conditions, So we are suggesting a rule that applies here. The record has not been created yet. This is just a suggestion. If we click on it, we can preview what the expense will look like based on the rule we defined. The first thing we notice is the date. February 28th, which is the last day of the prior month. This is because we had that toggle enabled. The bank record date is March 13th, but since we had that date toggle turned on, it will post on the last day of the prior month, February 28th. The amount is $150. The description was set to use the default, which is the bank record description. So that is what we see here. Here is the accounting that we defined. We did not specify a listing, so that's empty. Again, the default descriptions appear on each line. We selected Bill to Manager on both lines. Now, let's look at the allocation. So 120 is 80% of 150. 30 is 20% of 150. Now, this hasn't posted yet until we accept it. When we click Accept, it will be removed from this screen, and it will now show as matched by a bank rule in the Bank Feed tab. We can click it to open the bank record, and then click the expense to pull up the expense we created. This is now in the General Ledger, and it has been posted, so we can go to the detail. Again, this is everything we saw in the suggested preview, but it's now actually posted to the GL. Now, if we had decided that we want to apply this rule to the existing records, when we created the rule, we could do that here. Click Save, and apply it to one record. Now, if we go and look at our feed, we'll notice that nothing is being suggested. This is because in the previous screen, we selected to move forward and apply the rule to anything that exists and meets those conditions. So the system already created the expense and matched it to the bank record. Keep in mind that you can edit an existing bank rule by going to the Bank Rules tab and click the rule you want to edit. If we toggle on the option to create and match transactions to new incoming bank records, that applies only to future bank records that aren't yet in the system. Lastly, let's see how this works when we add bank records via CSV import. If we were using Plaid, this would be automatic with a Plaid connection. Let's say, for example, we import a bank record dated March 20th, 2026 with the description containing housekeeping for the amount of -$200. We're going to import this. What we should expect is that once we import it, VRTrust will detect that this new bank record meets the conditions of our bank rule. Since we have the automatically create and match toggle turned on, it will immediately apply the rule and the accounting to it. So after refreshing the screen, we see that the record we just imported is already accounted for. VRTrust detected that the conditions were met, and it automatically created and matched this transaction. Now, you're ready to start creating your own bank rules. This reduces manual reconciliation time and ensures consistent, accurate accounting as new bank activity comes in.